Welcome to the pre-show. This is Scotty Roberts. We are live, at least over on the YouTube stream and also on the Facebook stream. Here, hang on. I have to set this up right so I can be at the right height for my camera. Things are awfully bright tonight. Let's see what we can do about that while we're setting up.
Yes, I am.
Oops. Yeah, there we go. All right, both of you upstairs. Upstairs and out. All right, sorry. Had children not giving a damn whether or not we were on air. So let's see. Let me get the right buttons all pushed. And you all know how that is. You know how my family is. Boom, there's that. Now I have to plug in my sound. Well, my headset anyway. Hope everybody's having a good evening. And looking for all the holes on the backside. So there we go. All right. Doors closed, but you can probably still hear all the shouting going on upstairs. That's all children not doing what they're supposed to be doing. How about that? So how's everybody doing tonight? We got a little over 2 minutes, and we'll go dark for a few seconds while we connect to the stream and or connect to the live broadcast. The stream is connected now, and then the show intro will start. All right. Hope everybody's doing okay tonight. I'm just going to make sure all my junk is up here and ready. I don't need anything about Neoplatonism up. We talked about that a couple of nights ago. Everybody remember what Neoplatonism is? Let's see what else we got here. We got Matthew 10. We don't need that up anymore. It's 90301. And etc. Got all kinds of stuff going on here that can go away. And I am wondering why I have StreamYard. Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah, we're good. We're good. Boom. So we're broadcasting through StreamYard, which is a great little program for doing this kind of broadcasting work. I also have I'm going to paste it in the window. This is if you want to call into the show tonight, but you can't just call randomly tonight. If you have something to add to the topic at hand, state so over in the chat room. If I miss you for some reason, hopefully somebody else will bring it to my attention. And so this will all be in an effort to get you to call in at the right moments. So we got 04 and 15. We're going dark. Be right back.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
You're damn tootin'. It is Intelligent Talk. Welcome, everyone, to the Intrepid radio program. I am your host, Scotty Roberts, and we're broadcasting right here on Odyssey Radio. You can go see everything about Odyssey Radio, all the other shows over there at Odyssey, ODYSY, radio.com. And I want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Somebody's flashing the lights on me. I'm not quite sure. Oh, that was Rainey. She said sorry. And so I want to welcome you all into the show. I didn't see any pre-chatter tonight because I was doing something all the way up until showtime. So Matthew Sainsbury, welcome. Leslie Holker, welcome. Good to see you. And Philip Blair, love to see you. Easy for me to say. Good to see you here. Glad that you made it in. I saw that you said love the beeps, LOL, on the ad, and I mixed that up with my own words. Field Guy, good to see you as always. Grumpy Stack, and Barbie D is here. And who else? Who else? Am I missing anybody else that's in the chat room right now? Steve Clark is here. He was early on anyway. And wow, you guys had quite a conversation going on before we even got started tonight. So all of you over in the chat room, over on the YouTube channel, thank you for being here. And folks who are listening audibly through Odyssey Radio, you can go over to Facebook and see the video version of this with a chat room at Odyssey Radio's Facebook page. And you can also come on over to my YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. There's my beautiful wife, Rainey, in the wings. You going to come and say hi to everybody while you're right here? So, yeah, come on over. You got to bend over, though. Yeah, I want you to. I want you to. I so want you to. There she is. There's my lovely wife, Rainey.
Hey.
Hey, chat room. And those of you, all the Intrep heads over in the chat room, it's good to have you here. And that's the only place you're going to get to see my lovely wife from time to time, unless you join us on Sundays when we do It's Sunday.
Sometimes when I join on Sundays, because Scotty does it way too early.
Yeah, that 9 o'clock hour is tough on Sunday.
It is. I don't get to sleep in hardly ever, so Sunday is like the day.
That's the day.
Because everybody wants a massage Saturday morning, so I always got to be up.
That's right.
And half the time I'm up Sunday mornings running out to do massages too.
Yep.
It's nice to sleep in.
And that's what she does for not a living, but that's her profession. There's Ellery waving hi. And so most of you who are used to this show are used to my family always being here. And we've kind of tightened that stricture a little bit. It's good for, what's that?
So I'm fixing what I got left over for makeup on.
Oh, I see. There you go. And so, well, it's good to have you here.
Yeah.
Glad you stopped by.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
Sure.
Bye.
It's good to have you as a guest.
Yeah. Right.
We're going to do a casting couch thing a little later.
Are we?
To work on some of your diction.
Nice.
Hi.
So, hi.
Watch your mouth. I'm gonna spank you with this.
Yes.
And you too, Ellie.
And you too.
Okay. You go off to bed.
I think hers would hurt more than mine.
All right.
All right.
True.
So
I'm gonna take these evil munchkins to bed.
you take those evil munchkins to bed, and I will see you a little later.
And I see Matt said hi. Hi, Matthew.
Hey, Matt.
And
Matthew or Matt Finn?
Matthew.
There's two Matts there.
Matthew.
Matthew Sainsbury is down in Barbados.
Yeah.
And so living
it's
in
happening
the
now.
lap of luxury.
So I know a bunch of you others have said hi. So you
There
can't see
you
my
go.
hand. Hi.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to take these evil children to bed.
Cool. I'm going to talk about violence in Christianity.
Are you?
Yeah.
There's a lot of violence in Christianity.
There is.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Nuns, rulers,
Right?
you know how it is. So
Spoons.
that's right.
Seriously, I've had enough of the kids. I brought the spoon down, so I don't
Yeah.
have to go. Here we go. So I don't
That's
have to go
good night
downstairs.
story time is being told via wooden spoon tonight.
Yes.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Good night.
Anyways, good night.
I'll see you in a bit.
Bye.
Bye, guys. I'll see you a little later. All right.
I sent my letter down there.
Everybody who is not seeing the visuals on this, you're just listening to the audio, that's my family. They like to come and join every now and then. And, of course, Sunday mornings we do a not official with Odyssey Radio, just here on the YouTube channel. We do It's Sunday with Scotty and Rainey. And usually half the show without Rainey because I'm the one up at 9 o'clock. And that's 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. And tonight we are going to talk a little bit about a topic that's a bit controversial, that can raise some hackles. It's an extension of the last couple of nights that really started when we were talking about Hypatia of Alexandria the other night, who in the early 400s AD, she was a teacher in Alexandria, and she was very well known. And she was an intellectual and an astronomer, and she was also a pagan, but she was a mathematician, and she taught, and she knocked heads with the Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Church at that time, Cyril of Alexandria. And it ended up with her being murdered by a mob of monks, Christian monks, because Cyril was wanting more control over the city of Alexandria, and the governor of Alexandria was also a pagan, and he was a dear friend of Hypatia of Alexandria's, and the bishop thought that she was standing in between him and Ocestris, the governor, being able to come to some terms. And it was really the church wanted to control what was going on in the city. And they wanted all the pagans out. And so that was a big problem. And that was a problem that existed then. And it led into all of this stuff about the violence in the church talk that we've done the last couple of nights. And so something, I made a statement in the opening graphic for this show tonight. And I want you to think about this for a second. And that statement talked about how after Constantine, or after the Constantinian shift, he was the emperor of Rome in the early 300s. But after that period of time, Christianity became really entangled in government, and they wanted to govern the places where the church existed. And not only did they want the church to exist as the only religion in the world, and they wanted to convert lost souls to the love of Jesus and to God, they wanted to control the masses. And so that relationship between religion and politics changed forever after the time of Constantine, when church started entering into church government. And so this is a little church history. So in exploring why the church became violent over the following centuries, it really stems back to the control that the church wanted to impose over the people in certain areas of the world. Well, most areas, actually. And so before we get into that in full swing, there was a couple of things that I wanted to get into tonight. First one, we've got less than 24 hours left on the Kickstarter campaign for The Sword in the Clay. And all I want to say about that is this. At this point, it's probably, we're going to be very hard pressed to raise the balance of the $15,700 needed to make the goal. So I would say it's most probable that we will not make that goal. As a matter of fact, where it sits right now at this very moment, if I were to reload this campaign, we have 59 backers and $4,273 and 20 hours left. So, if you've just been waiting to the very end and you want to go in and make your pledges in there and bring us up and help us win our goal, that's fantastic. We would take it. But at the same time, I want you to realize something. And I think there were some people that didn't know this right away. Some people had some questions for me over the last couple of days. This Kickstarter campaign, he says, well, at least you made almost enough to do your publishing. And I said, well, no, we didn't, because the way Kickstarter works, it's an all or nothing proposition. When you put up a campaign on Kickstarter, you meet your goal and you get whatever you meet for goal and anything over. It all comes to you. If you don't make your goal, you don't get a penny. It just shuts down and it all dissolves. Nobody's cards get charged. They don't charge anybody any money until they might put a hold on your card, but they don't charge money out of your account unless we make that goal. And so that's what the deal is with Kickstarter. Kickstarter is all about all or nothing. And Leslie says, well, Scotty, if it doesn't go through, I'm donating my pledge directly to you. Well, thank you. God knows I could use cash, but that's an always thing around here. We're artists, my wife and I. So how do you live? Well, you live off your art. And so sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really bad. So all that to say, thank you, Leslie. I appreciate that. But I will also say this. It appears that we are still going to move forward and get this book published. We were just hoping to demonstrate to our publisher, our financier, the level of interest out there in this sort of book. And what I mean by this sort of book is books about history that are not dry, gloss your eyes over historical reference books. These are tidbits out of history. These are stories out of history. This particular book, The Sword and the Clay, as you know already, is a story. It's a ghost story. It's a story of honor, a story of brotherhood that spans 2,000 years. It involves ancient Rome, and it involves World War I. And the characters span those time periods. And so it's a great story that tells the story of history without being in a history class, without being dry and boring. And so all of that to say is if you pledged, the book will still become available. Not exactly when we thought it was, not in the way we thought it was, but that book will become available. And we'll let you know. We'll make an announcement when that comes out. And so back in the day when people were devoted to each other out of love, said Leslie Holger. I missed what that was about, the context of that, because I'm talking. But anyway, that's it for the Kickstarter. If you wanted to go over yet, you've got 20 hours. You can go make a pledge. I think that your pledge, this is a bad thing to say when we're at this point, when we're trying to see who can come in. But since I'm a bit dubious it will make another 15,000 plus in the next 20 hours. I mean, it could happen. It's happened before. But you can go make your pledge. And if we do make our goal, you'll be charged for it when we make the goal. If you don't, you won't be charged for that. But what that does do is it still lets our publisher know that there's interest out there in this kind of book, which is what Ryan Gale, who was sitting in the chat room tonight, and I really, in a very friendly way, tried to twist his arm into doing, start this historical publishing company. And we'll show you, we'll demonstrate the efficacy of doing this. And so hopefully he'll still be there with us after all this. But I really wanted the Kickstarter to show him that people are interested in getting this kind of book. Ryan's got 2 books out. He's got a book out on lumberjacking in the northern states. I think it's in Minnesota. I don't know the exact title. That just came out. Ryan, if you're still in there, you could tell people about it. And there is also a book he did on the great ships of the Great Lakes. And it's a very cool book. And they're not story books per se, but they're books about these things in history, in our local history here. So they're a lot of fun. And so, yeah, he's had 2 books out. And it was our same financier that financed his books before. And so this is why we kind of hit him up to start a publishing company, an historical publishing company, which hopefully would be something that would interest most of you. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are saying, I know some people that say, well, I don't read. It's like, gosh, I'm sorry for you if you don't read. But I will say this, for being a writer and a published author 5 times over, I didn't read when I was in high school. I hated reading. I had other things I wanted to do. I'd watch TV, go to the movies. Reading, I didn't want to read. I didn't really start reading. I can almost attribute the time when I started doing my reading. There was one book in high school that I read, and it was The World of Star Trek by David Gerrold. He's the guy who wrote the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles. And he wrote a book about Star Trek. Now, I don't know if it was The World of Star Trek or The Making of Star Trek. It was one of those two. And it had a paperback cover, and it was about that thick. And it had the Enterprise shooting its blue phasers out on the front cover. And just a paperback novel, which probably back then cost $1.95 in the early to mid 70s. And so that got me reading. I read that whole book. And then after college, I had to read so much for college, and, you had to read for school, of course. But it was when I got out of college, I had a week or 2 off before I had to start working, just taking some time off. And I went to the library and I pulled out every Star Trek paperback novel I could find. And there's hundreds of them now. Back in the mid 70s, there weren't quite so many. And most of them were about the different episodes before they started going beyond the 79 original episodes. And then they went into other stories. And so I sat for 2 weeks with a stack of books by the chair in the living room, my mom's living room. And I sat and read novels for a week and a half. So that's when I really started reading. And then I started reading I started reading a lot of history. I read a lot of biographies. I loved historical fiction. Some of my favorite books to date have been historical fiction. Novels have been historical fiction. I like, if you were to look at my bookshelves here and behind me and over there, that bookshelf, and all the books on that bookshelf, all the books on those 2 bookshelves, they really comprise a lot of history. I've got a whole section on Custer and The Last Stand and the Native American West. I've got a whole section on ancient Rome. I've got a whole section back here on World War II. And all of those kinds of books were things I've collected over the years. And so that's the kind of reading I did. I read some Dan Brown, Philip Blair. I did read the Da Vinci Code, and I thought it was a good book. It stirred the imagination. You know what it made me want to do? It made me want to find out what the hell the story was really all about. So it spurred on my imagination that way. And so being a writer now, I didn't like to read when I was a kid. Now I love to read. My daughters, Abby and Bryn, my oldest, my twins, they love to read. They grew up voracious readers. And my son Sam, a little bit, not so much. Flynn likes to read a lot. Rowan and Ellery aren't so big on reading yet. Ellery's a little young quite yet for doing a lot of heavy reading, but they like to be read too. And they like stories. And so we're going to talk about violence. Grumpy, don't rush me, or I'll talk about books for another 20 minutes. Hang in there. We'll get to violence. I'll show you violence. And so, if you like to read, you like to read. If you don't like to read, you don't. I get that. But the book I've written and the other books I've written in the past, historical books, non-fictional books about the Nephilim, the reptilians, and things like that. Tam O'Hare was a fictional book, a lot like this one, historical fiction. And so there you go. That's the kind of stuff that I write, and that's the kind of stuff I hope you guys enjoy reading. And if you don't, make some time to do some reading. Find a book that really appeals to you, things that you are interested in, and read those. Like, take a book. I don't know what your interest levels are, but when we were talking a lot about meditation, we were talking a lot about knowing things, about being awake. What does that really mean? Not woke, but awake. All of these things, find books on that stuff and read them and see what it does for you. Philip Blair says adventure stories about pirates and lost treasures. Those were fun when I was little, especially the nonfiction. Yeah, I read a great book, a non-fictional book. If you haven't read this, Philip, pick up The Pirate Hunter by Richard Zacks, Zachs or Zacks. It's all about the real life story of Captain Kidd, and it's fascinating. I didn't know all the stuff about Captain Kidd, and a lot of these historians nowadays that are worth their salt, they're starting to write more in not narrative, not a storybook, but they're writing in ways that really draw you into the story they are telling out of history. So I think you'll enjoy that one. So anyway, prompted on by Doug Stack, I had another section I wanted to get into before we got into this. I was going to talk about a little bit about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and his writings about what happened at the Academy Awards the other night. And, when that thing first happened, you all go, I'm not all that interested. I was even all not that interested. I don't give two flying rats' asses what millionaire elites in Hollywood do, unless it affects Star Trek or something like that. So it's not a big thing for me, a going concern. But man, it's turned into that, hasn't it? You're on one side of the issue or the other. And to me, it's a clear-cut thing. And so he wrote a very good article. You can look up thehill.com, meaning like Capitol Hill, thehill.com. And they have a great article by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on this. And I was going to read through that. We're going to skip that tonight. We'll hit it tomorrow night if we have time. All right. So here we go. Doug, just for you, we're going to talk about violence now. Violence in the church. And I have to preface this by saying I am not anti-church. I am not anti-Christianity. I do, however, have a lot of questions. I'm starting to see Christianity in the same light that I see Islam or Judaism or other religions, is that these are all constructs of men, human beings, to get to God, to find the God that they want, to make God into who they need him to be. And I even wonder about that with Christianity at times. Even though I was a dyed-in-the-wool, born-again, fundamentalist, Baptist, conservative Christian. And I could name the date I became born again. May 28th, 1972, when I was 11 years old. all of those things. And I followed that path for a very long time, all the way up through college and into seminary. I was going to go into ministry. I served as youth minister in different places, all while I was working in advertising on the side. And I saw the work in advertising was what supported me while I could do my ministry work, which paid me nothing usually. And so I don't have a stick up my ass about Christianity. That's a problem I see a lot of people have. I even put up a topic like this. Yeah, you give it to them, Christians. Well, that's not what this is about. This is about looking what actually happened. And last night, we talked about genocidal warfare. We talked about the Inquisition and all the violence that came out of that. And by the way, you will notice that violence in the church really coincided with whether or not the church considered you a heretic or the church considered you non-believers. And as we've said a few times, in each time we recap and introduce this topic, if you remember a couple of years ago, I talked about Gnostic mysticism and Christianity in the early the first 2 centuries. Very different form of Christianity than we know today. And it's because the literalist Orthodox Church won that fight between themselves and the mystics. And what happened was that war waged on, and the literalist Orthodox Church ended up literally wiping out everybody who believed a different way, especially in the Gnosticism. And again, this is light. I'm touching on these points light. And that's really where you had a lot of violence coming in. And of course, people would say, well, didn't God condone violence in the Old Testament? Well, yeah, he did. That's the problem. But there was always a justification for, well, God did that to drive the heathens out. Well, it's like we read from that passage from Matthew 10 last night to introduce this topic. And you found in Matthew 10, what was Jesus telling his followers? He says, when you go out there, he says, go out there. He says, meet people, spread the word. And he says, if somebody doesn't listen, he says, move on. He said, we are not to be their judge. They will be judged at the right time for what they did with God and what Jesus was saying in that passage, what they do with me, and so on. But of course, we all know those are things that were written by people. And this is why I like textual criticism. This is why I've gone through so much research of these things. Not exhaustive research, but I see things, I read things, I consider things, and I want to know why things ended up the way they were. Why was there condoned murder of non-believers? And of course, in the Old Testament times, this was when you had to have your sins atoned for by bringing a lamb and slaughtering it at the temple once a year, if you were Jewish. And so Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, and it was supposed to be a time, an age of grace, where God offered his grace. And you go to the loving arms of the Abba Father in the Aramaic, the Daddy God, and not Buddy Christ, but the Daddy God in the language, the linguistics of it, that God became more like a daddy who would take his children and set them on his lap and tell them stories and heal their wounds and so on. Yet we find in New Testament era, and moving on into the era we're in now, post-testamental eras, you find that the church became very violent. Once again, the church incorporated violence against those who did not believe what they wanted them to believe. Christian terrorism started up. Christian terrorism comprises terrorist acts that are committed by groups or individuals who use Christian motivations or goals as a justification for their actions. We see this now today. As with other forms of religious terrorism, Christian terrorists have relied on interpretations of the tenets of their faith, interpretations of it. And in this case, the Bible. Such groups have cited Old Testament and New Testament scriptures to justify violence and killing to seek or bring about the end times, the times when Christ would come back, the second advent of the Son of Man would come back. This is a biblical concept. If you didn't know that, eschatology, the prophecies of the end times, of Armageddon, the rapture, the millennial kingdom of God on the earth. These are all the things that we're supposed to be ushered in. And sometimes Christians wanted to usher those in by incorporating Christian terrorism, bring these end times about. To me, it seems to me that if you want to bring about the working of God the Father, the loving, all-knowing God, the loving Savior, Jesus Christ, you want to bring these acts of theirs around by committing violence and murder, you're going about it the wrong way. And so the interpretations are typically different from those of established Christian denominations, some of these terroristic groups. But then you also have, and down through the ages, the forced conversions. Forcible conversion to Christianity, and the history of Christian thought on persuasion, persecution, tolerance. After the Constantine shift, which is what I said in the title tonight, after the Constantine shift, now Constantine was the emperor of Rome in the late 200s, early 300s. He's the one that started convoking some of the councils, like the Council of Nicaea. He's the one who became the Christian emperor of Rome, Constantine. And he made Christianity the official religion of Rome. And he made the emperor of Rome the official pope of the church. One God, one religion, equated to one emperor, one empire. And so this is what he did. And so this Constantinian shift, we call it, somewhere in there is where Christianity became entangled in government. And while anthropologists have shown that throughout history, the relationship between religion and politics has been complex, there is no doubt that religious institutions, including Christian ones, have been used coercively by governments, and that they've used coercion themselves to convert people to their beliefs. Augustine, you remember who he was? He was a bishop of Hippo. Be a great place. Like John's guy, when we were writing our book on the Exodus and Moses, John's guy for Moses was Amenhotep, son of Hapu. I said, "Oh, Hapu, would you like a slushy with that?" And you think of the Simpsons. But Augustine, he was also known as Saint Augustine, Augustine of Hippo. He was a theologian. He was a philosopher of Berber origin in Numidia, and he was, which was Roman North Africa. And his writings influenced the development of Western philosophy and Western Christianity. And so Augustine advocated government force in his Epistle 185, entitled A Treatise Concerning the Correction of the Donatists. Donatists, probably. Not donut. Doug, get that out of your mind. Not the Doughnut's, the Donatists. Justifying coercion from the scripture. It justifies coercing people to come to God, coercing people to come to Christ. You come and in the name of the love of Jesus Christ, you come up to this altar and you get saved, or we're going to murder your family. It was that kind of a thing. It was justifying this type of coercion from Scripture. He cites Jesus striking Paul during Paul's vision on the road to Damascus. Remember, Paul never met Jesus face to face. The Apostle Paul, who wrote good 2/3 of the New Testament. But his conversion experience, by his own words, nobody else saw it. They just saw him fall from his horse, and a bright light blinded him for a few days. And he said it was Jesus met with him right there, and that was his conversion experience. And so Jesus knocks Paul down to the road. And who are you, Lord? Paul is supposed to have said. And Jesus said, I'm Jesus, who you persecute. And so he's saying that he justifies coercion from this event. Jesus striking down Paul on the road to Damascus. He also cites the parable of the great banquet in Luke 14. Such short-term pain for the sake of eternal salvation was an act of charity and love in his view. And so examples of forced coercion to convert someone to Christianity include the Christian persecution of paganism under Theodosius, the forced conversion and violent assimilation of pagan tribes in medieval Europe, the Inquisition, including its manifestations in Gao, Mexico, Portugal, and Spain, the forced conversion of indigenous children in North America, Native American kids, and also the Aboriginals in Australia. All of these are examples of forced conversion. You look at our own, you remember way back a couple of years ago when we were doing Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, the Native American view, from the Native American viewpoint, the conquering of the American West. And what happened many times when they drove these tribes off their land, they overpowered them, they took their land from them, claiming eminent domain, claiming that it was the right of the United States to take this land from them. It was right, it was destiny, manifest destiny for the United States to take this land away from them. Well, what did they do when they put them on reservations? They outlawed their native languages. They outlawed native dress, native religion, native customs, and they dressed them in white man's clothes and forced them to go to white man's schools, cut their hair, etc., etc., etc. If you remember any of the points from that series at all. And so, hey, Macabre Menace, good to see you, Sterling. And I'm glad you're in here today. I haven't seen you for a long time. Good to see you. Glad you made it. He's over in the chat room. And folks, if you're listening audibly over at the radio station, Odyssey Radio, you can come over here and join the live chat room of fellow Intrepids. And by the way, I'll say it now and I'll say it again right at the end of the show, is that when we go out for the night off the air, you can... you're able to stick around here, and we'll continue the chatting about this topic a little bit afterwards. And so, let's see. I wanted to double check something while I'm here. Okay, and I just a station note to Ron Phillips. I forgot once again to hit the audio record for tonight's show. I recorded audibly. I edited in the bumps. And we put it up for the next day for archive. And I didn't do that again. There's buttons to push, and I keep forgetting. I don't know why that is. I don't know what it is, but I forgot again. So anyway, back to all of this. So all of these were things that were examples of persecuting people to believe. And making believers out of them. And if they weren't believers in their heart, they were believers in action. And so what does God want with that? He wants somebody to come and love him from their heart, according to Scripture. And I told you this example once before. I saw they had done a little mini series off the book Bury My Hearted Wounded Knee. Now, the book goes through all the different tribes over 100 years or so. They didn't do that in the miniseries. They chose the Lakota tribe, the build-up to the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and so on. And there was I do, Steve, by the way. It's sitting right here on a checklist. Right here, see? That's all the things I'm supposed to do before the show. I just forget to do it. I even have the program open in the background. I just forgot to click the button. So anyway, there was a scene in that miniseries where one of the characters, an historical character, his father was already dressing in the white man's clothes, had his hair cut and was like cowboy hats and stuff, and they were forcing his son, young son, about 12 years old, I think, to cut his hair, his long hair, his braids, and send him to the mission school. And the father was very visibly trying to do what the white man wanted him to do. He realized his way of life was over and gone. And there's a scene where he's putting his son on the train. And in the movie, this was a great way that they represented this. His son was reluctant to go, and he said, "You must go, my son. You have to go." And he stood as the train starts speeding up and click-clacking away alongside him. He starts singing, "Jesus, lover of my soul. Jesus, lover of my soul," is how the song goes. It's an old hymn. And he starts singing this. And he sings, it's very rough, and he says, "Jesus, lover of my soul, let me to thy bosom fly." And this train is going by with his son. And as he's singing, Jesus, and he breaks into his native language song, and tears streaming down his face. And so this is what the Native Americans in our country were forced into. Now, does that represent every denomination? Does that represent true Christianity? No, that was a governmental thing that they made them do. But once the church, after the time of Constantine, started becoming entwined in government, is when you saw a lot of these things take place. And by the way, I have to say here and now, this is why there was a time where I was so much part of the religious right. When I was early in my seminary days, my early ministry days, back in the early 80s, I was part of the whole moral majority movement, if some of you remember what that was, with Jerry Falwell and so on. And there were things that happened, and I've told stories for another time. We don't have to recount them tonight, but stories that would lead me to think this is not as spiritual an organization as I was led to believe. I had problems with it. It was part of my pulling away process from Christianity. And but the moral majority was one that wanted to say we needed a religious right element to our government. And I at first I agreed with that, but now I'm in total disagreement for that. Now, let me qualify that. I do not think that it's wrong for any given politician, president, senator, or whatever, to have a personal faith. You can be Christian, you can be Muslim, you can be Jewish, you can be Buddhist, you can be whatever you want to be, pagan, Wiccan. So long as you govern secularly. You can have a personal faith, but you cannot govern by that faith. That faith might guide your life. Maybe it guides your decisions that you make and the way you vote on things. But that needs to be left at the door. Even Thomas Jefferson said we have to have a secular government. You cannot rule by the, what's the word I'm looking for? Under the auspices of any one religion. And I believe that firmly. The religious right in this country today would be aghast if we allowed say there was a group called the Islamic right, and they wanted to take over the way government runs and run it by the Quran. The religious right in this country would be aghast at that. Most people would too. But we seem to think that because it's Christianity, it's okay to think that we can't. You've got to hold those faiths on your own and take them out of government. Government must be secular. Jesus himself said. He says, whose image is on this coin? He held up a coin. They all said, Caesar's. He says, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. I believe that was his statement, his monumental, epic statement on the mixture of religion or spirituality and government. Give to Caesar what's Caesar's, to God what's God's. Now, there's also this thinking that Christianity, in the terrorism it brought, the violence it brought, was because there was a support of slavery. And early Christianity variously opposed, accepted, and ignored slavery. Oh, one of the other, take your pick. And the early Christian perspectives on slavery were formed in the contexts of Christianity's roots in Judaism. And they were also shaped by the wider culture of the Roman Empire. And both the Old and the New Testaments recognized the existence of the institution of slavery. One of the books of the New Testament, Philemon, tiny little book that is written, epistle written by Paul, where he's writing to his friend Philemon, who was a Roman, and he had slaves, and one of his slaves had run away. And that runaway slave had, in the meantime, while he was gone, become a Christian. Paul sent him back to Philemon with this letter in his hand. And the letter said, accept him not just as your returned slave, but as a brother in Christ. This is very interesting. So even the New Testament if it did not condone slavery, it recognized the fact that it existed. And so the earliest surviving Christian teachings about slavery are from Paul, the Apostle Paul. Paul didn't renounce the institution of slavery, though perhaps this was not for personal reasons, just like Aristotle was the same way. He taught that as Christian slaves ought to serve their masters wholeheartedly. If you're a slave, do it wholeheartedly and do it in the name of God, he told them. Don't break the law and run away. So nothing in the passage affirms slavery as a naturally valid or divinely mandated institution, but rather Paul's discussion about the duties of Christian slaves and the responsibilities of Christian slave owners transforms the institution, even if it falls short of calling for slavery's outright abolition. And so in the ancient world, the slave was a thing. Aristotle wrote that there could never be friendship between a master and a slave, for a master and a slave have nothing in common, he said. A slave is a living tool, just as a tool is an inanimate slave. Now, Paul's words are entirely different. He calls the slave a slave of Christ, one who wants to do the will of God and who will receive a reward for whatever good he does. Likewise, the master is responsible to God for how he treats his slave, who is ultimately God's property rather than his own. And so this is another way of saying that the slave, no less than the master, has been made in God's image, and as such he possesses inestimable worth. wealth and great dignity, and he's to be treated properly. In such a framework, slavery, even though it was still slavery, could never be the same type of institution that was imposed on non-Christians. It was this transformation which came from viewing all persons as being made in God's image that ultimately would destroy the institution of slavery. Tradition describes Pope Pius I, 158 to 167. And Pope Calixtus, 217 to 222, as former slaves of Rome. So you know what, guys? We're out of time. We got to go. I just looked at the clock. We got 4 seconds left. Live long and prosper. Stick around.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Hey folks, we're back. We are off air over at the radio station, and I just got to punch a button in about in a little less than a minute. You know what? I'm wrong. We're not off air. I read the clock wrong. Now we'll be off air. We got about 15 seconds to go. Oh man, human error. Let's do this one more time, guys. Live long and prosper. I'll be back. Stick around.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Not the last of my errors to be made, I am sure. So thanks for still being here, guys. And we're going to stick around for a few minutes. We're going to talk about this a little more. And if you want to call into the show, you can do that. I've got to cut us off from the server right now. So stand by. Let me push the right button. Boom. Man, I've got a night of errors tonight. I didn't start the recording of the audio version of the show. And then I took us out too early. And you know what? It's not that I don't know what time it is. It's that I read the clock wrong. So my apologies. We could have gone on for a whole nother minute before doing that. Thank you, Philip Blair. I appreciate that. And anyway, there we go. That's all this talk about slavery and so on, and Christian involvement in slavery. And by the way, there's a lot more to this Christian violence stuff we're going to get into tomorrow night. And it's a variety show. We talk about a variety of things, whatever I like. It's my show, so I make a choice, and sometimes I go overtime on some of the things I'm going on, but don't worry about it. Murphy's Law, says Michelle Cannon-Free. That's right. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. If Scotty can forget to do it, he will. And so, and that's part of the problem of having a close-ended show on the radio without a producer or an engineer. If I get impassioned about what I'm talking about or excited about what I'm talking about, and I keep going and going and going, I still have to watch that clock. You know what I need to do? I need to get a big red digital number clock and just set a timer up right in front of me. So I'm always seeing it, and I don't have to look up into the little corner up there on the screen to see what time it is. So, hey, Dave Potter, welcome to the end of the show. I think, Dave, you're stuck in a different time zone or something. So, yeah, tomorrow's another day or a better day, says Leslie. 10:57 where you are, Matthew. And yeah, it's 9:57 here, 9:59 now. And just little snafus. And to say I'm not used to the time yet is probably so. I've done 2 weeks of shows like this now, new on the station, as opposed to almost 3 years of doing the show kind of open-ended. And so we've got to fit into the right schedule, though, now over there. And, of course, I forgot to hit the audio recording for tonight. So, you know what that means? That means I may have to download the show from YouTube and remove the audio. So there you go. It's all technical. You don't need to know any of that stuff. This is just how it works over here. So how was your guys' day? What'd you do today? I felt like I had a wasted day today. We've still got this thing. We were wondering, is it COVID? But we haven't tested positive for it. We had COVID, over a year ago. And, but Rainey and I have both been just dragged out lately. It's like, what is that? In the last 2 to 3 weeks. Cough, a dry cough. I don't go into the hacking cough. I don't think I coughed at all during the show tonight, which is surprising. But then it's the tired. I wake up in the morning tired. I wake up and I make coffee and I try to do some dishes from the night before, get the kids up, stuff like that. And Rainey she got up and she made breakfast this morning after the kids were gone and came back. I came back from dropping the kids off. Or did she drop them off today? Can't remember. And she came and she cooked some eggs and hash browns and sausage and stuff like that for breakfast for her and I. And I sat and had breakfast with her and coffee and fell asleep. And then she had to get up and do some running. And so I said, I'm going to just sit right here on the sofa. And she got up and she was exhausted already too. And she left and I stood up and wobbled. I said, that's it. I just went, I said, I'm just giving in. I went back and laid down on my bed. And she came in, woke me up about an hour and a half to 2 hours later. And she said, are you alive in here? And I said, yeah, get in this bed. She said, I brought you a taco. I said, even better. She goes, no, it's kind of taco. Never mind. You all get me. And so we just wonder, because we don't have any of the other signs of, I didn't lose any taste buds. I had a dry cough, a lung cough, but I've had that before COVID existed. And so just exhausted. And all day I was like, I'm trying to make myself be awake. So today I was working on, hello, hold on. My light just fell over. Hang on. Just got to go around to the back side. Not sure why that fell over, but it did. Boom and boom. Whole lamp just fell over. Not quite sure why. Oh, maybe I do. I see the cord is tangled up in this packet of papers right here and there. So I was working a little bit today on, not that this is the thing that's paying the bills right now, but it was something that I needed to do. I hopped in and started doing a little more work on the 10 Breaths of Ra, my Egyptian novel set in the 1920s. And remember, I told you a long time ago, what went missing was a whole swath of that book I had written. Wasn't in any of the copious numbers of files I had made, copies of files. Wasn't on my my upload site. It wasn't on my backup discs. I was sure I had sent it to my daughters to take a read. I had sent it to my agent. nowhere. Not in any attachments anywhere. It's just gone. And not long ago, I think it was after the move, I found these papers. And it's two-sided sheets of paper. It's all these chapters. Well, this is one big chapter that had all that missing information. But it's not in text that I can import. It's all typewritten. Well, it's printed out. But the file is just gone. So I started kind of working on that a little bit today. And so, Leslie, I heard that today, too. The FBI lost the info from Hunter's laptop. Oh, where did that go? How many cases, big cases, important cases, does the FBI lose information on? That's pretty interesting, isn't it? It makes you know, it's like the movies. It's like watching the movies where people end up dead or files end up missing or something's not where it's supposed to be. Everything falls apart. And it's like this, it's the stuff of fiction, and we're experiencing that now. When you start watching that stuff anymore, you start to realize that truth is stranger than fiction. So, yeah, the flu finally came back. First case of flu in 2 years. Because the flu didn't exist while we had COVID. So, yeah, if they don't want to find it, it disappears. Ain't that the truth? And the only way it ever appears again is if you have a whistleblower that finds it. You do have the press, though, is a little upset about all this. Seeing even the press that really was the Biden support arm during the election. The press is starting to ask him some tough questions from sources you wouldn't expect it. They're starting to ask, hey, what about this stuff with Hunter? What about this stuff on this disc? So on, so on, so on. So it starts to get old. Anything not connected to the word Trump, State Potter. Yeah, they want to do away with that. Not section 42. What's it called? 42. On immigration. They're now working up to have an executive order to dissolve that, which basically said at the border, very strict, fast laws that said you can turn away immigrants at the border without them sitting in the United States, going through a lengthy process for asylum. And you do know this. You do know that this is all being done to build a voter base. Think about that for a minute. That's not a conspiracy. It's the way things have been done through the ages. So, but I found this, there's this one little section I found. And it's not the same thing. I had started rewriting this because I had lost it all. And his grandparents. Okay, there we go. It is silver. I'm just looking at something here. I think this is all the further I got with this particular chapter. But listen to this. This is one of the missing sections of the book. Goes like this. Ready? Little storytelling. Far from the arid sands of Egypt, and just a handful of miles from the Welsh border, lay a broad expanse of green, fertile land, swathed in ash and adler groves, out of whose sacred heart thrust the stone towers and sky-piercing spires of the ancient Mott and Bailey Manor House that is the home to the family Badcock. Poised on a grassy hill above the River Wye, the great house stood for 17 centuries in one form or another, beginning with a Roman fort whose ruins melted long ago into the crest of the Mott Hill, and served as the foundation of the small medieval keep that through the course of time saw renovations and expansions into the magnificent edifice that stands sentinel over the town of White on Wye to this very day. Keep in mind, this is unedited stuff. The great house has witnessed the rise and fall of Saxon and Norman overlords, the rule of generations of English monarchs, innumerable border wars, territorial battles, and even a little siege or two. And due to the graciousness of its current master, the house recently served as a convalescent home for the wounded British soldiers returning home from the Great War to end all wars. With its long history, one might rightly expect that such an imposing place would be filled with dark halls, eerie corridors, shadowy enclaves or alcoves, and somber spirits of former inhabitants. But this morning it was filled with dazzling sunlight that dappled through the blossoming trees in the gardens surrounding Badcock Manor, and poured through the cathedral windows lining the eastern wall of the manor's great house. Now it goes on, but before I get too far with that, this was some of the rewrites. Let's see. Where do I have that? Maybe I can access it. Let's see. The rewrite of that section, because I had to write it over, I had lost all of this stuff, sounded a little different. And I'm looking for ways now to incorporate both versions of this. Let's see. Wow. My computer is acting funny. Since we're in overtime, though, we're not broadcasting this. Let me show. Oh, now my computer is acting funky. Everything's freezing up on me for some reason. Hopefully this broadcast just didn't go bad. There we go. How about that? I see it now. Let's see what we got. I just got spinny, and then all the windows start popping open as I was doing a search for something. Let's see if this pops up. Is this the one? Let's find out. That is not the one I'm looking for. Let's see. It would be perhaps this one. Let's find out. Nope, not that one. I think it's this one. This one or nothing. Here you go. Now, this is how I had opened up. Skip to read-only mode. There you go. Now, this was some of the rewriting of what I had just read you. The rewriting kind of went like this. It said, from a bird's eye view, Linwood House, I used a Welsh word, Linwood House held an impressive view of the River Wye and the yawning Bowrood Valley, just a stone's throw from the ancient hamlet of Finninginnid and its centuries-old sacred well. It is said that an ancient Roman fort lay beneath the foundations of the ancient manor house, and that nearly 2,000 years of ghosts walked its halls. That, frankly, was the dark charm and appeal the place held for the senior Badcock when he acquired it. Coming from a long line of Romani, he was the first to settle permanently, retiring his ponies and wagons and sinking his feet into the Welsh hillside. The realization of his amassed fortune acquired with the making of aeroplanes before and during the war. As new aristocracy, it was incumbent upon him to give his young son the best he could afford, and Daniel Badcock spent the bulk of his teen years in the lap of luxury, with little to remind him of the more humble days of his grandparents and their horse-drawn wagons. So that's how I had started to rewrite this. But now I found some sections of this that had been lost. And those go like this. You see the introduction to the manor house, the old manor house. It's about 1,700 years old from its inception, meaning it had probably a Roman fort beneath it, then a motte and bailey built atop it, then that was leveled and a house was built, and then various reparations and various reworkings of the house, all the way up to what was in this story the present house built in the late 1500s, a 16th century manor house. And so that's what you've got now. And you find a lot of these types of places in Great Britain. Well, this is the house, so we're introduced to that. And then it goes on like this. It says, Daniel Badcock lay sprawled across an overlarge wingback chair, his booted feet dangling over one arm. I may have read this to you before, a long time ago, when I first read it. His head hanging over the other arm of the chair as he stared into the timbered ceiling of the hall. Papers, books, and maps scattered the floor in a 6-foot radius around the chair. A silver tray with an empty china teapot and cup sat atop a smallish tower of leather-bound books built of titles ranging from Jack London's Call of the Wild to Zane Grey's Riders of the Purple Sage, topped off with Tarbell's The History of the Standard Oil Company. A gift from Daniel's business-minded father. As the only son to Shadrach and Cinderella Badcock, master and mistress of Badcock Manor, Daniel, at the virile age of 21, was expected to soon take on more responsibility in his father's aeroplane company. Yet he longed for the old days and ways, those times when his grandparents were but simple gypsies who roamed the Welsh countryside in their horse-drawn wagon, telling fortunes, playing music, and working in metal and carpentry for the few coins they could earn. It's not that Daniel had no head for business. It was simply a matter of his heart pulling him in a completely different direction. But his yearning for adventure, travel, and exploit to exotic locales, satisfying his blood-bred wanderlust, which he knew in his heart had come from his grandfather, hop-skipping a generation over his father, who permanently parked the family Vardo and made a fortune in the burgeoning aviation business, which surged to exponential heights during the Great War with his wartime profits. During the Great War. With his wartime profits, Shadrach Badcock had joined the ranks of Britain's aristocratic nouveau riche, and he acquired the Motte and Bailey Manor House that now bore the family name. "Shakespeare!" Daniel called out at the top of his lungs. "Hot tea, my good man!" Shakespeare was not the butler's given name, but his sort of personal nom de plume he had given himself upon his arrival from Egypt nearly a decade earlier. Chenzira Mifsud. I haven't said that name for a long time. Was an Egyptian man whose past was a bit dark and enigmatic, like he had something to hide, but he had worked for Daniel's father, who rather liked the mysterious darkness of the fellow, and he was eventually brought into the employ of the great house as chief butler. A prestigious position for any immigrant worker. Daniel respected the stalwartness of their Egyptian staffsmen, as he was quite the mathematician, held a great affinity for languages, and despite his many household duties, still had time to lay out his rug and pray toward the east 5 times every day. Jumping up energetically, Daniel stretched his body toward the ceiling, shaking off the stiffness of the chair, and strode to the long table as Shakespeare entered the hall from the direction of the kitchens. There on the white linen tablecloth sat a round silver charger, holding what looked like a large yellowed envelope. "Your tea, Daniel," said Shakespeare, as he poured the steaming brew into a new cup. "Hello, what's this?" asked Daniel, eyeing the envelope, which wasn't really an envelope at all, but a heavily folded piece of papyrus, sealed with dark red wax blobs. "It was delivered for you sometime during the night," said Shakespeare, in his deep, luxuriant accent. "But there is no indication from whom it was sent. It was taken in by the ostler down in the stables, who was not as sleeping as the rest of the house." For a moment, Daniel sipped his tea and quietly stared at the papyrus, then set his cup on the table and took the bulky missive from the platter, saying cheerily, "Well, let's crack it open, Shaky. I'm all curious now." Daniel picked up the letter, looking it over as he turned it slowly in his hands, examining the folds. His name was scrawled in black ink on one side, Mr. D. Badcock. And by the look of the staggered cursive, it was obviously written in the hand of someone who mastered a language other than the king's English. The papyrus held the smell of the world, and Daniel's senses peaked as he picked up the slight scent of desert sand mixed with the damp salt of sea air and the faintest tinge of wood fire. This letter had traveled far to reach him. He flipped it over to get a good look at the wax seal, at which his eyes widened and his heart skipped a beat. There, in the folds of the moistened wax, was an eye, looking back at his. "That is a wadjet," noted Shakespeare. "Well, you obviously know your onions, Shaky. It's the Eye of Horus," Daniel added, "the symbol of royal power. The mystical ancient eye of protection, la la la. How awe-inspiring is that?" The eye had been pressed into the wax when it was hot and liquid, and now its hardened prowess of health, majesty, and encompassing guardianship was staring up at Daniel from its affixed position on the folded papyrus. That's what I've got of that section of the book. It was great finding this stuff because I had lost it for a year. So there it is. So that's what I started working on that a little bit more today. That's a book that has decidedly been pushed to the back burner several times over the last couple of years. And I remember I was talking about this book when I was in Louisiana. I thought I would have time to finish it there. Then I thought a month home from Louisiana last year, and I'd have that done. But then, of course, that notion was predicated on the thought that I would do well in Louisiana last year, and we basically lost our shorts. So I came home and had to just start working on everything else right away. Me too, Leslie. When I find things I lost, it's great. And then I found it it's printed out, as you can see. These pages are all printed out in that form. And so it was nice to find them and have them. And so now I can transpose them and edit them along the way and add some of the new stuff that I've written into it. And so I would like to get this book done. My agent would love nothing more, Italia Gandolfo, would love nothing more than to see me finish this book. And unlike The Sword and the Clay, which is about 8,000 words, this book's going to be about an 80,000 word book. It's going to be about 10 times as long. And it's a novel in its own right. So there you go. Let's see. What else do we have here? Just looking at people's texts over here. Let's see. Good night, Matthew Sainsbury. He's already off to bed. Good to have had you here tonight. Gremlins, said Dave Potter. I don't know what he's talking about there. Elderberry says probably Revolutionary War where the Gates family took over. Let's see. We got anything else in here that I'm missing? I'm just skimming through the chat room. Roger Rabbit says, sounds like all the Apollo mission data that disappeared. Our government is good at losing important things. That would piss me off royally if that stuff is gone for good. And what's that going to tell the public? What would the public have to surmise by something of this magnitude being hidden for 2 years, and then when it comes to light, within 2 months it disappears? What's that tell you? That, I see problem in that. What did Dave Potter say here? That's right up there with my dog ate the homework. They think we're stupid enough to believe this shit, and isn't that the truth? They think we're stupid enough to buy it. If that information disappeared, you know goddamn well that there is something in that information that implicates the president and probably other people. Otherwise, it wouldn't have disappeared. Julian Assange just got married according to Philip Blair. Well, good for that boy. They're told to ask, knowing they'll never get an answer, and then the story disappears. Boom. So, and we've all seen things in the movies where you're watching something and there's information that would implicate somebody, and the bad guy always comes in and he finds that thing and he absolutely destroys the only copy of it. You watch him melt the thing down and you're like, shit. That's all the evidence right there. It's gone. Now they will never be able to prove their case, and so on and so on and so on. We've seen it in the movies. We are definitely savvy enough to know what's going on. I'm looking at the chat room. Elderberry says Republican senators already saw the laptop and have copies of the most damning evidence. Well, that's good to know. And publicly already read enough for treason charges already. There you go. It's just always nice to have the source, isn't it? I hope that the copies they made were official enough and are provable enough. It'll be interesting to see if senators and people in government start losing that information. That information starts disappearing on them. So I've heard about this in ufology. People I know that have been very tight in the ufological circles. And their own information. They come home and find their laptops gone. Or a laptop that had all their information, all this research they'd been doing that implicates or that shows disclosure, whatever it might be. And they find that all that information is suddenly gone from their hard drive. That backup disks are missing. It would do well to, I think, if you know you have that kind of information, to have several chains of backup, which I'm sure some of these people do. So that's very distressing when you see that. Our government doesn't work any differently than governments did 100 and 1,000 years ago. What else we got? Just looking through. We get bread and watch the circus. That's right, Sean Stroik. We get the bread and we watch the circus. World War II was an extension of the First World War, but in a more deadly way, said Matthew Sainsbury. Leave it to Matthew Sainsbury to come up with all these factoids for us. I don't know what he was referring to actually there, but thank you for that, Matthew. Revolutionary War where the Gates family took over. That's where that fell in from Elderberry. Your computer is haunted, Scotty, said Philip Blair. Yeah, it just might be, brother. It does weird things sometimes on me. I think it's probably just tech. But there's times I'll click on something and it will get overrun and everything pops up all over, then shuts down all over, then freezes and locks around. So, Murphy isn't done with me yet, Captain. Done with you yet, Captain, says Michelle Cannon-Frey. Sad to say you're right about that. Let's see. Good night, Matthew. Peaceful sleep. Bit to you. Let's see. What does Roger Rabbit say? Yes, the both are sleeping soundly. Carlene Kinsey. Kinsey's been seizure-free since about 9:10 p.m. Listen to what you just said there, Roger. Kinsey's been seizure-free for about an hour, maybe two. When you're saying that, that is, what's the word I want to use for that, or grouping of words or phrase? When you can just count the last 2 hours that she's been, thank God we've had 2 hours. That's a long stint without seizures. That's telling you something about how often this is happening and how bad that really is and how taxing that has to be. Let's see. Losing things deliberately. I think the reference to Gremlins. Well, oh, my computer issues. Thank you, Leslie. Yes, I'm sure. Those who pay attention know it's not lost, but deliberately lost. That's very true, Leslie Holger. And I didn't see Matt Finn tonight. Matt Finn, I hope you're doing okay if you hear this. Let's see, a lot of Americans are stupid enough to buy into it, says Leslie. That's very true. Oh, the physical laptop has disappeared, says Dave Potter. Hopefully there are some backups made of that hard drive. So that's unbelievable. Let's see. And it's locked up where those who want to destroy it can't find it. It's either locked up or it's been destroyed. Wow. Hey, Morgan Snow. See you're here tonight. I don't know how long ago you came in, but somebody said hi to you, and I see that there. An Oklahoma senator signed a bill today banning biological males from competing in women's sports. So there might be some hope out there. Well, there you go. I would go along with that. Let's see. Must be people still talking because there's a lot of new posts down here. Let's see. Scotty, please tell Rainey that I've been trying all night to get into her Tumblr site and it's not working. I got an error message. Well, that's our doing, Leslie. We actually changed the name of the company just this afternoon. Haven't announced it yet. And we made all the changes and boom, they changed it all over at GoDaddy where we're operating the site out of there. So she changed the name. Now, you know, she has Two Loons Massage. And so Mersquatch Tumblers was just hard for everybody to say. And hard for every time she spelled it, she goes, how do you spell Mersquatch again? And so that was just a whim we named it that on. And so she said, let's just make it two loons massage. I'm sorry, two loons tumblers. So if you go to the numeral 2 loons tumblers.com, you'll get to the same site. It's just been all ported over and renamed, just like this. www.2loonstumblers.com. We're going to put up a little announcement on that. We just haven't done that yet. Well, did that paste? I think it did. There it is. Yep. So 2loonstumblers.com. Boom, boom, boomity boom. So I'm just watching a thing, Dave Potter says, from the congressional hearing with a congressman asking the FBI guy where the laptop is. The laptop, he says, I don't know where the laptop is. And he says, well, thank God. Interesting. He says, well, thank God, I have a digital copy. And he holds up a portable hard drive. So they do have a copy of the hard drive from the missing laptop. Let's see how long it takes for that guy to get offed or that to be stolen. Hopefully, they've got more than the one copy. So a digital copy of that. And there's so many ways to erase those nowadays. I would hope to God he didn't bring the real thing with him. And that thing is under a secure lock and key somewhere, secretly. She says you can now have somebody anonymous walk by you with a briefcase or something in his pocket that can erase and disable any piece of tech you have in your pocket or in your briefcase. So it would sure be nice if I'm glad he said, well, thank God I've got a digital copy. That's good. I love that. And Dave saw that just now, folks. So that's pretty good. All right. Good news there, David. So KISS, Michelle Cannonfree says, keep it simple, stupid, or something else. Second S stands for sweetie. Keep it simple, sweetie. That works, Scotty. Thank you, said Leslie Hoker. You're welcome. Who are we kissing? Sean Stroik would like to know. Who are we kissing? I don't kiss and tell, says Michelle Cannonfree. That's maybe a good policy, huh? So, hopefully no facial hair, says Sean Stroik. Free pickles, tickles, tickle. You guys. Let's see. A clean president can't get elected anymore. They only want compromised individuals as POTUS. Well, there's something to that most likely. So, bada boom. Well, I've got 10:37 by my clock, guys. And it might be time to call it quits here. I'm tired. I'm hearing movement. I think it's my son, my 12-year-old boy moving around here somewhere. So, by the way, parents, do you ever get in the mode of, with your children, where you want to look at them and say, I must break you? Our kids are such smartasses. Where do they get that from? And they talk back so much. And they think they know everything. And Rowan's the worst. Talks back so much. And it pisses you off. And you want to break them. I will break you down, private. But then you don't want to at the same time. There's parts of you that hate having to do that because that's her spunk. That's her confidence. I don't want to drive her to tears or anything, but I'm like, don't you speak to your mother that way. Well, it was interesting. We had friends of the kids all came over today. And the friend's mom stopped by to pick them up earlier this evening, around 8 o'clock. And they were all smart enough. All the kids were smart enough to Rainey and their mom, and everybody's kind of taking it lighthearted. But Rainey said to one of our kids, she said, "You will get that done. I told you that was supposed to be done. And you're lucky your friend came over, because they wouldn't have been allowed to come over if you hadn't," and so on, And so she had to get it done. And she's mouthing off. And the mouthing off isn't, it's not just being nasty. It's clever. It's well thought out. It's witty, some of it. But it's like, I'll be damned if my child speaks to me in well thought out witticisms instead of talking back. That's in the place of talking back. And I said, "I'm sorry. What did you just say to your mom?" And, anyway, this other kid, his mom told him, you need to be, they're all talking about chores and stuff. Rainey and her are talking about chores to the kids. And I was doing something else, and I could overhear this. And they're all standing kind of down the stairs into the entryway, or up the stairs, depending on what part of the house you're in. And they're all going on about this, and the kids are all smarting off to the moms. And I finally, after listening to this, I said, "All right." Nobody could see me yet. And I came from the other room to the top of the stairs. I said, "All right." I said, "All this cessery to the moms here has got to stop." I said, "Now, I'm not mad at anybody. I don't want anybody to be afraid of what I have to say, but I'm going to tell you something." And I spoke to the kid, and I said, "This thing you're arguing with your mom about?" I said, "Stop arguing about it. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Your mom is right. She's asking you to do something. And you're finding," I said, "my observation," and the mom's just listening to me and like, "Yeah." And Rainey's listening. I said, "My observation of all this is that you're looking at smart-ass ways to mouth back to your mom." I said, "Try this. Why don't you try respecting your mom? Honor your mom for who she is." I said, "You're belly aching about having to wash a dish or clean a gerbil cage once a week." Your gerbil, I said, by the way, it's your gerbil from what I heard, or hamster, whatever it was. So it's your pet. And you're arguing about whether or not you should have to clean it out. Well, who should have to clean it out? It's your pet. Clean it out. "Well, my mom can." I said, No. And he got quiet with me, which was nice, because not familiar with having me talk to him like that. And she's a single mom, from what I gather. But I said, "You know what?" I said, "Your mom, who you are talking back to, who you should be respecting and honoring and almost worshiping the ground she walks on, because what does your mom do for you?" I said, "She cooks for you. She cleans your laundry for you." And I said, "Frankly, you're at the age where I started learning how to do laundry." It's about Flynn's age, 12-year-old kid. I said, "I learned before that. My mom taught me." I said, "But she cooks for you. She cleans for you. She does your laundry. Oh, she makes sure that there's food in the house, even when she's not cooking it." I said, "What's that last bowl of Count Chocula you ate? Who bought that for you? Your mom." I said, "Who pays for the house that you live in, that roof over your head?" I said, "Are you paying for that?" I said, "Who pays for that? Your mom. What does she do to pay for that?" I said, "She has to go to work every day at 3 a.m. And she's got to work what's considered to be a menial job. in order to get money in on your to feed you, house you, clothe you. So those clothes you're wearing, did you buy those or did your mom? And I said, the house you live in, blah, blah, blah. I went through everything. And I said, okay. I said, there's a short list for you. I said, I'm not trying to get in your case or anything, but let me ask you a question. In light of all that your mom does for you, why do you disrespect her and dishonor her when you should be upholding that woman that's standing in front of you right now as the woman that you live because she lives? You thrive because she works. I said, why don't you find ways, instead of making excuses for not cleaning out your hamster cage, why don't you say, Mom, I'm going to take my cell phone. I said, which your face is buried in a lot anyway. You play games. So take your cell phone. Set up an alarm system that says, this day every week at this time, it'll go off to remind me I have to do my... And why would you do something so silly as that? I said, because you don't want your mom to have to worry about it or to get on your case about it. I said, how can you honor your mom and show her you respect her? I said, do the things that you need to do, that she's asked you to do, and the things that you would do so she doesn't have to. I said, doing dishes. Same thing around here with my kids. I said, I've been telling my kids, I said, I've told them probably 1,000 times, without exaggerating, over the last couple of years, between 3 kids and almost a daily reminder, clean your own dish. And I only say that because we don't usually eat with the big around the table Norman Rockwell type of dinner. We're all kind of doing our separate things, and we eat either down here at the desks, Rainey and I. Kids will grab a bowl of something or a plate of something, eat it on the sofa down here, or we all watch TV and we'll eat out there. And sometimes we have the opportunity, we'll set up a nice dinner with a tablecloth and set the table and all that and have dinner. And so we got into the habit of saying, look, if you dirty a dish, why don't you, as the son, one of the men of the house, why don't you take that responsibility off your mom? Say, Mom, I got this. Wash your own dish. Don't make a mess. And then we've got a phrase around here. If you don't make a mess, you don't have a mess to clean up later. You don't make a mess, you don't have to clean one up. And I said, so try honoring your mom and respecting her. You know what his answer was to me? Okay. And so there you go. So Leslie says, I hate dirty dishes in my sink. When I was little, my mama used to say, look at that dirty dish. You can almost see the bacteria growing on them. So to this day, I can see the bacteria growing on them. There you go. Yeah. And so we work very hard to get our kids, and I work very hard to get my kids, honor your mom and respect her. Because she gives and gives and gives to you guys. I said, who drove you to school today? It was Mom this morning, because Flynn had to go to an appointment, and I was sticking around here with him. She said, make sure he takes a shower this morning. And he had to go to the doctor. And so she drove the girls to school, and then she had to go run a couple of errands too, and then run Flynn in and stuff like that. And so, I say to the kids, who drives you to school? Who picks you up from school? Who helps you out with all of these things? Hey, baby.
Hey, can we take the trash out?
Yeah.
Okay, it's trash tomorrow.
I can see my boy has taken on his responsibility. I said, hey, it's your job to take the cans to the street every Wednesday night.
Yep, you need to remind him.
Yeah, I got to remind him every week. Every week. Just like I have to remind him every day to wash his dish. We happen to be talking about this stuff right now. So yeah. That's what it is with kids. Is that the learning? I don't remember it being that tough on my mom. Good night. See you in a bit.
Make sure Flynn goes to bed too, except they're walking around in here.
Yeah, he could be taking it out right now. So, hey, Flynn. See if he hears me. So we got the two cans, the garbage can, the recycling can. Have to go out every Wednesday night. So I get dragged to the street. So I'll have to go do that because my son didn't do it. But these are the things. So, and I asked the kids, I said, why would you rather talk back to your mom than honor your mom? Respect your mom. She doesn't do anything dishonorable to you. She gives her life for you. Everything she does is focused on you guys. I said, show her that you care about that you love her, that you respect her. So Niall says, kids are great so long as I can give them back. Yeah, there's some truth to that. So no returns, says Sean. And reminders are a many, but they do good. Yeah, that's right. Well, I got to remind my kids every day of their daily chores, which they should have down. It's like, oh, I forgot. It's like, how could you forget? I've said this to you every day for the last 3 years. I've said the same thing to you. Oh, I forgot. How do you forget that? Oh, well, there you go. So that was a fun little episode tonight with the neighbor kid and his mom and all of that stuff. All right, guys, guess what? I got to take trash out to the street. If my son's still awake upstairs, which he's supposed to be in bed already, it's a school night. I don't care if you're 12. You don't stay up till 11 o'clock on a school night. You got school. You got to be sharp in the morning. And he's the hardest thing to wake up in the morning that exists. 5, 6 times, tell him to get out of bed. The other morning, I told him after 2 or 3 times, son, shouldn't need to have to do this. I said, you are up in 10 minutes when I leave with the girls, take them to school, or you get to walk. And they're in walking distance anyway. The bus doesn't come here. They're roughly a mile away from school, but that's because I got to go around the woods and back up the sidewalk. If they could cut right through the woods, they're 2 city blocks away. But there's other paths they can take around the water tower and the nefarious water tower. They can go that way and stuff like that. But all of that to say, he's hard to get up. And I told him it was cold the other morning. I said, son, it's cold. We drive them to school when it's cold or raining. But in the warm months, they have to walk. That's why we move. That's why they have bicycles. It takes them 8 minutes to bicycle to school, if that. But we take them on the rainy days and the cold days. And I remember Flynn started waking him up at 7 o'clock. He didn't get up till 8:03 after I had already returned from dropping his sisters off at school. Oh, you give me a ride. I said, sorry, you missed the bus, son. I said, I would love to give you a ride, but no, I'm not going to. I said, if you're not going to work at getting your butt out of bed in the morning, I'm not going to make 2 trips to school because you didn't want to get out of bed, didn't feel like it. And this is where those things that pain you as a parent, you don't want to do that. You're like, come on, everybody. But it's every day. Every day it's a fight. It's a struggle. So it's become a thing of, I've turned it now into a thing of, this happens so much. Rare are the days it doesn't happen. That if you act this way in the morning, there's consequences. he growls at his mom. He yells at me, he kicks things around. I say, you know what? That's not just, I'm not a morning person. I said, you are going to have to work to turn that off. I said, I don't care if you, and his thing every morning is, I don't care. I don't want to go to school. I said, I don't care that you don't care. I said, you know what I care about? I said that your mom and I get up to make sure that you're on your way to school every morning. We've asked them every night for the last year at least or more, lay out your stuff for school. Know what you're wearing tomorrow. Know where your book bag is. Know where the stuff is that you got to bring to school with you. When does that all happen? 2 minutes after we were supposed to have left for school the next morning. It's a constant fight. Let's see. Good night, Leslie, says Roger, and good luck winning the sleep lottery tonight. Hope you can hit the jackpot. So there you go. Impromptu, talking about being a parent, talking about kids. And for now, I got to get going. It's 11 o'clock here in the evening. And I got to take the cans out to the street tonight. Roll all the garbage down. And if Flynn's up, he's doing it with me. We'll each take a can. So, but it's his job. So, it's not strictly his job. I'll take that back. He probably doesn't. He knows. Every week I ask him the same thing. I said, get the cans out to the street before you go to bed today. So, there it is. All right, folks. I got no more. I got nothing else. So let's end this little captain's cabin for the night. We've been going an hour since the end of the show. So, and it was only supposed to originally be 10, 15, 20 minutes. And we go an hour so many nights. So it's fun. That's all I got. So guys, I will see you tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Thursday already. And it's the last day of March tomorrow. So let's take advantage of it. I'll see you back here tomorrow night. Have a good night. Didn't do anything. I hate sitting here with that dumb look on my face where you go, click. Click. All right, here we go. I think we're going for real this time. Let's give it a shot. Have a good night.